Alright, we're moving on to section 5.3. How do you add, subtract, and multiply polynomials? Okay, so some of this section is review. Actually, most of it is, but we're extending it a little bit more into more involved problems. So when we add and subtract polynomial functions, we're basically combining like terms. We've done stuff like this before. Okay, so let's look at number one here. So here's my first polynomial, my second one, we're adding them together. So all I have to do is add like terms. So I got an x squared here and a 5x squared there. Gives me a 6x squared. I got a negative 6x and a negative 1x is a negative 7x. And then I add the constant terms, and that's going to add up to negative 6. That's it. Okay, so you want to make sure you write it properly from biggest exponent to smallest afterwards. Subtraction, same thing, except I'm going to subtract. Okay, so I'm going to take my biggest exponent here first. So I got a 9x cubed, and I'm subtracting a 1x cubed, so that gives me an 8x cubed. I don't have an x squared here, but I'm subtracting negative 13x squared. So I have no x squareds minus negative 13x squared minus a negative becomes a plus. So I get that. I got an 8x, and then I don't have any x's here. And then my constant term, I have negative 3 minus negative 4, so that's plus 4. So that's negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So that's my solution there. Here's another subtraction one. Minus sign, let me fix that a little bit. Now, one other way to do subtraction is to add the opposite. So instead of subtracting, what you can do instead is change the sign to plus, and then change the sign of everything else inside of there. This becomes a minus. This becomes a plus, and then we just add. Sometimes it's easier for people to add the opposite. Okay, so now we add these. My 3x cubed and 4x cubed is 7x cubed. 4x squared, negative 6x squared is negative 2x squared. 7x is all I have, and then 12 plus 3 is 15. Okay, so that's another way to do subtraction. Multiplication. Here I'm just multiplying through. You can use FOIL or you can use distributive property. I'm going to use distributive property here, so I'm going to multiply the 3x by both things over here. So 3x times 2x is a 6x squared. 3x times this, negative 15x. 2 times 2x is 4x. And then 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Now we look for items to combine. I can combine in the middle. And I'm done. Okay, those are things we've done before. Now we move on to a binomial times a trinomial. Now we can't use FOIL here because we have a trinomial. Okay, so I'm going to use the kind of the same process I did here. I'm going to take this x, I'm going to multiply it by all three parts of the first one. Then I'm going to multiply the 2 times all three parts. So I'm going to have 6 different things here. So x times 3x squared would be 3x cubed. X times negative x is negative x squared. X times negative 5. 2 times 3x squared would be 6x squared. 2 times that is going to be negative 2x. And then 2 times negative 5 is negative 10. Then I look for like terms to combine. I got my 3x cubed, I've got my negative x squared, and 6x squared is 5x squared. Negative 5 and a negative 2 is a negative 7x minus 10. So that's what I end up with on that one. Okay, so that's a binomial times a trinomial. Here I have what ends up being the solution of a difference of squares. So when I multiply this out, I can do it the same way I did this. 3 times 3 is going to be a 9x squared. 3 times 5 is a plus 15x. That's this one. And then a middle term is a minus 15x. And then minus 25. Notice the middle terms cancel out here, so I get 9x squared minus 25. Remember, when we factored that, we noticed that it's a difference of squares, and it factors into this. Okay, this is a special product pattern, sum and difference of squares. On page 347 is some shortcuts for this type of multiplying. Okay, if you notice, you have this sort of a situation. You have binomials. The only difference is the plus and the minus. Then you know that all you got to do is multiply these two together and multiply these two together, because the middle term always cancels. Okay, but otherwise you can just multiply it out like a normal binomial times a binomial, and then the middle terms cancel. Okay. Next one, number 7, I'm multiplying 3 binomials together. Okay, so if I'm going to multiply 3 binomials together, what I have to do is pick 2 of them and multiply them together, and then multiply the result by the third one. So it doesn't really matter which ones you pick. So just for this one, I'm going to leave the first one alone. I'm going to multiply these ones together. X times x is x squared. Then I'm gonna combine right away. So I'm going to x times 6 is 6x. 2 times x is 2x. So when I combine those, I'm going to get 8x. And then 2 times 6 is 12. Okay, so when I multiply those together, that's what I get. Now I have to multiply that by the first one, just like I did on number 5 up there. So I'm going to multiply x times everything. Then I'm going to multiply 5 times everything. And then I'm going to combine. Oops, that should be a minus. And I get that. So that's that one. Finally, number 8, x minus 5 cubed. This is also a special product pattern, and there's a shortcut in your book on page 347. So let me show you the long cut way and the shortcut way, so that you know both. So the first way would be to take x minus 5 cubed and expand it into x minus 5, x minus 5, x minus 5, and then multiply them together. Okay, just like we did this one. So let's do the same thing, x minus 5, and then when I multiply these, x squared, then I'm going to get a minus 5x, and a minus 5x is a minus 10x, and then a minus 5 times minus 5 is plus 25. Then I'll multiply x by everything. And then multiply negative 5 times everything. And then that times that's going to be minus 125. So then I get x cubed, 10x squared, so minus 15x squared, plus 75x minus 125. That would be my result. Now also in your book, there's a shortcut for a cube of a binomial, and I'll write it below here. In general, if I have a minus b cubed, I can multiply it out by taking a cubed minus 3a squared b plus 3ab squared minus b cubed. It is on page 347. So in my case, for this problem, I have x minus 5 cubed. So a is x and b is 5. So let's see what I get. I get x cubed, and then I have minus 3 times a squared times b. So it's 3 x squared times 5, because b is 5 in this case, plus 3x 5 squared minus 5 cubed. So that gives me x. 5 times 3 is minus 15x squared. 5 squared is 25 times 3 is 75. And then 5 cubed is 125. So look at that. We got the same thing as we got when we multiplied out this way. Now you might say, well, this shortcut process is a little more difficult than the first process, and I probably wouldn't argue with you there. So you can do it either way. I tend to usually do it this way and just expand them out, multiply them. But when we get into some bigger numbers here, it might be easier to use the shortcut or the special product pattern process that's in your book on page 347. I just want to make sure you're aware of those. So that's it for section 5.3.